This fall, let your boots do the talking. Sam Edelman's latest collection brings Merlot hues, walkable heels, and wide calf styles that are made to fit you too. Shop now at samedelman.com.
Welcome to the Gay Therapy LA podcast, the show that empowers gay men to live their fullest, healthiest lives. Whether you're navigating relationships, mental health, intimacy, finances, career, or personal growth, Ken Howard, a licensed clinical social worker in California, certified psychiatric social worker, and ASEC certified sex therapist, is here to guide you with over 30 years of experience, specializing in gay male individuals, couples, and polycules. As the founder of GayTherapyLA.com and GayCoachingLA.com. And now, today's episode.
Hi, I'm Ken Howard, and welcome to the Gay Therapy LA podcast. Today, I want to talk about toxic gay currencies, how to avoid the attention, sex, and status traps. As a psychotherapist and coach specializing in gay men for over 33 years, working with literally thousands of gay male clients now, I've had a unique vantage point on the patterns that emerge in our lives and in our community. Again and again, I've noticed that many of our struggles cluster around what I call toxic gay currencies. These are the forms of social value that we chase: attention, sex, money, status, drama, revenge, and jealousy and envy that can seem powerful in the moment, but ultimately drain us rather than enrich us. Sometimes we trade in these currencies consciously, and other times unconsciously, because they are woven into our social environments. And while these patterns may feel normal, things we laugh about, complain about, or quietly struggle with, they often hold us back from the healthier, more sustaining forms of value that we actually need to thrive. Far too often, I see gay men investing heavily in what I call the toxic currencies: attention, sex, money, status, drama, revenge, and jealousy and envy. There may be more, but those are the ones that really stand out when I reflect on these. And these are tempting. These can feel powerful in the short term. They can feel like we are finally coming into our own after growing up with bullshit oppression from a heterosexist world. But they are unreliable investments when it comes to long-term mental health and quality of life and true connection. So let's unpack them and then talk about healthier currencies to trade in instead. Let's look at attention. Every human being needs attention. It's how we feel seen and recognized and validated as part of our culture and as part of the time and place in history that we find ourselves. I've written and spoken about that before, about how each of our lives is in a certain social and geographic and historical context. Every day that we're running around, we are a part of history, of the time and place that our lifetime is. In psychology, we talk about narcissistic needs. Healthy narcissism is when we want to be noticed for our accomplishments or talents or simply our presence in relationships. It's the natural desire to be recognized and appreciated. We all might feel good if someone gives us a compliment about a new haircut or a new outfit, or compliments some skill or talent that they've seen in us. Unhealthy narcissism is when the craving for attention becomes excessive or manipulative or dependent, or when it takes an inordinate amount of time or money or energy to sustain. Or when your self-worth rises and falls completely on whether others are looking at you or liking your posts on social media or praising you. You don't just appreciate when someone does this, you kind of live for it at the expense of other values. So let's talk about how to practice self-validation from the world of cognitive behavioral therapy. Cognitive reframing can mean, instead of thinking, no one noticed me, so I must not matter. Reframe that. I noticed myself, and I matter whether or not others validate me. Here in Los Angeles, this is September of 2025, And the Emmy Awards were on last night, and everybody there who's a nominee is part of a category of about 5 people or so. Only one can win the Emmy Award. And the others, they might be disappointed that they didn't win a prestigious television award. But they can take heart in that even if their work wasn't noticed with the awarding of an award, they know that they've done a good job and they've done fidelity to the acting profession or the other professions of what makes television happen and what makes television so important for so many people. Whether or not they win an award, they can validate themselves about how they feel about their important creative work. And everybody can feel this way, not just famous people on television. Behavioral strategies. Here's a trick. Write down 3 things daily that you did well or that you are proud of, no matter how small. That's a great way to build self-esteem. And it can build a self-awareness of things to appreciate about yourself. And it lays the foundation to appreciate the traits of others. It's the classic RuPaul quote, if you can't love yourself, how the hell are you going to love somebody else? And that can seem a little trite, it can seem a little repetitious, but I think RuPaul is onto something with that, because when you appreciate yourself, you're cultivating the ability to appreciate. And when you do that for yourself, it becomes easier to extend it to the other. And so you live in this appreciation of the things that people bring to society in a positive way. We all see examples lately of what people bring to society in a negative way. Everything from bigotry to outright vicious crimes. But when we can appreciate the good things about ourselves and the good things about other people, maybe we're cultivating a less coarse society. Let's hope so. Let's get your self-talk. Replace I need others to see me with I can see myself. Balanced exposure. If scrolling for validation on apps or Instagram or TikTok or whatever triggers a low self-esteem or a negative, depressed feeling of feeling bad about yourself in comparison, or FOMO, the fear of missing out, limit your exposure to those types of media and focus instead on meaningful interactions, probably offline. Instead of compare and despair with the apps and the media and all that, use the things that impress you about other people that you see on there. Fitness professionals, entertainment figures, sports figures, political figures, authors, activists, and let them inspire you in doing these things in your own way. Use their good examples to evoke these qualities in yourself to feel good about, not using their examples as something to feel bad about. You've seen me with some of my material on fitness because the gym is something that I enjoy, and it's probably my biggest hobby outside of my work. And I follow a lot of fitness figures on Instagram. These can be very pretty boys and they're fun to look at. But instead of feeling bad that I'm no longer young and in as good a shape as some of these guys, I never was in the shape of some of these guys. Instead, I really try to listen to what's worked for them from a fitness standpoint or a diet standpoint, and oftentimes an attitude standpoint. And I try to see things their way and adopt some of those things for myself, not to completely mimic them, but to derive something positive from their inspiration. And I see it that way, not as an excuse to feel bad about myself because they're in better shape and much younger, more fit guys. Let's talk about the currency of sex. Sex is wonderful, powerful, and healing when it's in balance for everyone of all sexual orientations and gender identities and cultures. But when sex is the only currency we deal in, it becomes distorted. Or if it plays an oversized role in our lives to the exclusion of other things that are very important, that need time and energy and attention, it's lopsided or somehow out of whack in terms of the percentage of time, energy, and attention, and sometimes money that sex is taking. We need to bring a critical thinking, a critical examination to exactly what it's doing and do we need to adjust it in some way? For many gay men, sex is not just about intimacy or pleasure. It becomes kind of a status symbol. Who you sleep with, how often, how adventurous you are, how attractive your partners are can become a social currency to brag about. It's like you're bagging a prize or something, and these are people we're talking about. On the flip side, some men elevate themselves by criticizing others' sex lives, indulging in slut-shaming or gossip or moral superiority, calling their sex illegitimate or sick or bad or wrong or sex addiction or twisted, when it's all in line with sexual health principles. That's probably key, is it in line with sexual health principles? And this can mask internalized homophobia or prudishness. I'm not like those guys, I'm better. But this is a false security. It's superiority by way of putting others down, and that never builds anyone up. Putting others down in order to step on them, to get to a higher level, that really never works. We see people trying to make it work, and to some degree they can succeed, Donald Trump, and you do see people achieving some success that way, but I think it can be hollow. There's that saying, be careful how you treat people on the way up the ladder, because those are the same people you're going to meet them on the way back down. So we need to return to the principles of sex therapy that I emphasize, and that's balance. I credit Doug Braun-Harvey and Michael Vigorito, whose book, Treating Out of Control Sexual Behavior, discusses the 6 principles of sexual health. And I have other content on that I've written about or podcasted, is that a verb, about. And those are, remember, consent, non-exploitation, honesty, mutual pleasure, protection from STIs or HIV or in some cases pregnancy, and shared responsibility for what's going on. And these principles allow sex to have the right role in our lives. Not too much, not too little, but a healthy, affirming part of our human experience, as is right for the partners that are involved in it, one or more. And again, those principles, and you can look up some of the other material on this, but just for convenience here, consent is a huge topic right now. Is there consent going on in a sexual situation? Non-exploitation, not exploiting a partner sexually for some kind of other reasons or running roughshod over their rights to dignity. Honesty, if you're being dishonest about a part of your sex, then it's probably not the ideal sexual health. Is there mutual pleasure, not just one person running roughshod over the other one, but is there a mutual benefit among the partners involved? Is there just a practical medical consideration for protection from STIs? Is there PrEP or DoxyPep and some of the other self-care for sexual health? And a shared responsibility, meaning it's not just up to one person to take care of everything in the sexual situation, but you're contributing to it together, the time and the place and the safety and the enjoyment. Let's talk about money. That's a currency, right? That's kind of the classic currency. Money is important. It buys stability, healthcare access, leisure travel, your housing, your food, your clothing, your shelter, access to cultural events, and dignity and security ultimately in retirement, if we make it that far. But so that requires a lot of planning. The older I get, the more I realize that retirement planning is a very important topic, and it's important even when you're a very young person. But worshiping money as a god is toxic. We've all seen it. Gay men can use how much money they have as a defense against the blows to our self-esteem from a lifetime of minority stress and cumulative trauma of devaluation from way too many sources: teachers, family, coaches, politicians, all kinds of sources of devaluation that we have to somehow deflect or cope with growing up. And even as adults, it doesn't really stop. For somebody like me, now in my 60s, I've had to deal with public figures calling for the systematic extermination of all gay men by government means ever since I was a kid. It happened with different politicians early on or different religious figures early on, but it's continued to this very day. You have people in the news doing this, especially political pundits or sometimes religious figures. And it's kind of creepy because the collective trauma of having people talk about you as a gay man for all of those decades is really kind of daunting. We have to have a certain resilience and a coping strategy dealing with the fact that our minority stress calls for our systemic murder by the governments of the world. Very few populations have that kind of stress. There are a few, unfortunately, but gay men, and nowadays certainly trans people, even maybe more so, deal with that kind of cumulative trauma every day. And we have to find a strategy for fighting back about it. We have to live and have a quality of life despite minority stress. So getting back to money, some gay men can become preoccupied with what others earn, constantly speculating about who has the highest paying job in the group, who just got a raise, who can afford the most luxurious cars or vacations. Others size up friends based on their income. Oh, he's a lawyer. He must be doing better than me. Or, he's an artist. He must not be that successful. Sometimes this even enters relationships. A man might judge his partner's worthiness as a partner based on whether he earns enough, define enough, subtly suggesting that love and compatibility can be measured in dollars. I don't think that's a very healthy bedrock or dynamic for a relationship, but it does happen. And money is not unimportant in relationships. I've written and spoken about that before, but to use it as the biggest criterion, I think, is a mistake. You want a match, as sentimental as it sounds, you want a match based in love, not based in money. And the real trap is equating your own self-worth with your own net worth. When your entire sense of value is tied to a bank statement, you set yourself up for constant anxiety and comparison and an emptiness that just keeps on going for a very long time. So, how do you build self-worth apart from net worth? Number one is you take pride in relationships that you nurture. Being a loyal friend, a caring partner, a supportive colleague, a dedicated and skilled professional, a hard worker in a job whose mission you care about. It's by recognizing your contributions, whether you're helping clients or customers or mentoring younger colleagues, creating new works or new projects, or volunteering, your impact matters. Celebrate the qualities that money can't buy: kindness, creativity, courage, ethics, ethics, responsibility, generosity, resilience, humor, and empathy. There's no store that will sell those for any price. You have to cultivate those qualities in yourself, and that's a kind of wealth. Anchor your identity in your passions. Art or sports or writing or cooking or activism. All of these things can be done in a low-cost way. And these give you a richness that a paycheck can't. Even, I think, cultural exposure. I was saying to somebody recently, I think the music that we learn to know over a lifetime of being exposed to different songs that become familiar to us, so that by the time you're middle-aged or even older, the wealth of cultural literacy that you have about entertainment and music, and for some people, sports, is a wealth that you can't buy. So is knowledge. You can buy knowledge in the sense of paying for a college degree or a graduate degree, but the wisdom that comes from applying that knowledge is something that you have to do for yourself that really can't be bought. So money should be a tool for security and quality of life, not the ultimate scorecard of who you are or who the people around you are. Let's look at status. Status is one of the most seductive toxic currencies in gay culture. It shows up in many forms. Work status. Oh, I'm at this prestigious company, or I hold this high-ranking title. Or social connections. I know so-and-so celebrity, or I'm in that exclusive circle. Or gyms and bodies. I work out at the most famous gym, or with the most ripped crowd, or at the most expensive gym where the elite meet. Or zip codes. I live in the most expensive neighborhood, or I have just the right address. Why does status have so much power? For many gay men, it's a defense against a lifetime of minority stress. Growing up, many of us were belittled, bullied, rejected for being gay, or just ignored for being gay, just not seen. We literally live in a society that calls for our extermination by the government on a regular basis, citing biblical or other religious text justification. We've seen multiple politicians and high-profile figures in the U.S. and worldwide doing this very recently. Seeking status becomes a way to say, see, I am valuable, I am somebody. But we are not what we own, or what we do, or where we live, or who we hang out with. As people, we're much more than that. The problem with status chasing is that it can lead to an elitism and an endless comparison and an endless hunger to always be better in some unhealthy way. Not better in terms of character, but better in terms of some superficial markers. It's a treadmill, and it never stops. There'll always be someone richer, prettier, more famous, younger, fitter, or more connected. Even if we reach what is generally considered the top, we can't stay there forever before someone else comes along to kick us off the top of the perch, until someone else does it to them yet again. So how do you step off the status race? Number one is you clarify your values. Instead of chasing external validation, ask what actually makes me proud of what I do or what I'm doing. What makes my life meaningful, even if other people don't see that way? And what makes me just plain happy? Celebrate contribution over comparison. Take pride in how you serve your clients and customers, or students, or colleagues, or friends, or community members, not just in your title or who you know, but what you're actually doing for others that is valuable to the marketplace or to the people that you're speaking with and interacting with. And diversify your identity. You're more than just your job or your physique or your appearance or your neighborhood. Find worth in these very intangible things like kindness, creativity, resilience, humor, and compassion, or how you contribute to social justice, and ultimately what you want to leave behind as your impact when your time in history is over. Status can feel powerful in the moment, and it can be fun to be a part of something that's known to be prestigious. It can be a shot in the arm to be the number one company in a certain field, and there is a certain place for status and pride, but we have to apply a lot of critical thinking so that that doesn't take an inordinate role in our lives. Authentic self-esteem outlasts superficial status every time. Let's look at drama. Gay drama is seductive because it makes life feel excited and urgent and important, but it's often a toxic fuel. Let's look at some examples in gay men's circles. Petty slights. He didn't invite me to his party, so I'm cutting him off. Or gossip, spreading rumors about who slept with whom and slut-shaming. Or who looks terrible lately, who relapsed, or who's unemployed again, or who wore the wrong thing to feel important. Or frenemy dynamics. Staying close to someone you secretly resent because it keeps the gossip pipeline alive. Undermining or sabotaging for your own gain at someone else's expense, socially or professionally. The problem with drama is that it burns energy and trust. It divides communities, it divides people, it damages friendships, and it leaves you feeling empty after the rush wears off. So, what to do instead with gay drama? Address issues directly rather than behind someone's back. You don't need to go into the fun of passive aggressiveness. Just call it, just call it very directly, and don't be afraid to confront something that you don't think is right. And express an opinion, but constructively as you can, not just to put somebody down. Or build friendships based on support and shared interests or pastimes, not just competition. Abundance thinking, as Louise Hay, the great writer, used to say, comes from believing that there is enough for all of us. We stand on the edge of the ocean and we take water of our share. But do we have a thimble or a cup or a wash tub or a bucket? What is the size of what we take from the ocean? But there's plenty for all, because there's no way we're going to run that ocean dry. When you're tempted to gossip, replace it just with curiosity. What's going well in your life right now? What are you psyched about these days? Another currency is revenge. It's very similar to drama, but it's one of the most corrosive toxic currencies. It comes from hurt pride or betrayal or social slights. Let's look how that plays out for gay men. Enemies, spreading damaging gossip about someone who embarrassed you just out of hurt and retaliation. Friends, cutting off a long-term friend because of one offense and then trying to poison their other relationships. I hear a lot of examples about this from clients, about this cutoff, ghosting, or whatever kind of business, instead of working through some kind of disagreement. Partners retaliating after a breakup by outing their secrets or bad-mouthing them to other people in the community or sabotaging their dating life. Somebody was giving me an example of that just recently, and it's because this person that was a former partner was acting out what shrinks call the abandonment rage. If somebody feels abandoned, they can either be sad and turn it all on themselves and say, oh, I guess I wasn't worth staying with. Or they can retaliate and say, you son of a bitch, I'll get you if it's the last thing I do. That's a toxic reaction to abandonment. And revenge of all kinds feels powerful in the moment, but it keeps you emotionally tied to the very person that you want to be rid of. So what are the alternatives to revenge? Justice versus revenge, let's say. If you were wronged at work, such as anti-gay discrimination, file a formal complaint or take legal action within the legal system, not just casual smear campaigns. I work with gay men fairly frequently who have experienced discrimination or other illegal acts, outright crime. And my therapy or coaching work with them helps to cultivate the resilience and the strategies they need to work for some kind of just resolution. It could be a legal case, it could be an arbitration, it could be some kind of a hearing or investigation. But you don't have to take things like discrimination lying down, but you do have to fight back in very strategic, very cunning ways. Limit setting. Instead of just trying to lash out and hurt back at someone, say, I won't tolerate this, and here's what I need to continue in this friendship or relationship or employment or whatever. Having a direct confrontation. A healthy confrontation clarifies your boundaries and asserts your dignity without dramatic escalation. And of course, having a forward focus. Invest energy in building new connections and opportunities instead of just stewing in anger. This has happened a lot with guys I've helped with who've maybe lost jobs due to discrimination or prejudice or some kind of politics. You can possibly pursue a legal action. I've worked with a number of guys who've pursued legal action, and they've gotten big settlements, big six-figure settlements that they can invest and or spend and enjoy. And it really has been compensation for something illegal that somebody's put them through. But Be that as it may, even if they get a settlement, they still have to think about a new job and moving on from that situation and building new connections that are more healthy and are good opportunities instead of just stewing in the anger from what happened to them. And true power is not in retaliation, but in releasing the grip of those who hurt you. It's controversial to say forgive and forget. That's a very complicated thing to work through in therapy. But there is a certain value in just releasing that episode or that experience, releasing it into the past and saying to your own present and future and saying, hey, what else you got? So much for that experience, but what else you got? What are other experiences that I can embark on? Maybe the next experience will be better. The currency of jealousy and envy. We see that. Jealousy in relationships often masquerades as love, but it's actually about control, or even about saving face, or retaliation, or a defense against feeling slighted. For example, a gay man might monitor his partner's phone constantly, checking text messages, demanding to know who every contact is, scrolling through the apps, looking for signs of infidelity in a monogamous relationship. And this leads to constant accusations. Why did you like his photo? Why were you online so late? What are you hiding on your phone? Why were you looking at him? Why were you talking to him? The relationship becomes this battleground of suspicion and defense and this accusation and response kind of volleying. That's not really a loving interaction. Or jealousy shows up in these explosive arguments. A partner chats casually with another guy at a bar, and suddenly the night ends in shouting and accusations and threats to leave. The insecurity underneath gets masked as rage. And really nothing good comes of that. Sometimes jealousy turns into isolation of your partner from a partner. I don't want you hanging out with him anymore. Or you can't go to that gym because too many guys hit on you there. What starts as insecurity becomes control, edging into the precursors actually of domestic violence. If domestic violence is going to happen, it's usually, in my experience over many years, it's going to start with tiny little assertions of control. I don't think he or she is good for you. I don't want to see you with them anymore. Starting to control who you have access to. It's not their job to do that. It's not okay to say that. Envy works similarly among friends, resenting someone else's career success or their relationship. Oh boy, familiar with that one. Or their body. Instead of feeling inspired and happy for someone, envy twists into this very toxic bitterness. Why him and not me? I really know that one. I've alluded to it before, but I've really experienced so-called friends resenting people that get into relationships because they say, well, why him and not me? I'm better than him. Nothing good comes of that either. So what's a healthier approach? Practice reassurance. Remind yourself of your worth all the time and your partner's commitment. You negotiate your relationships to other guys in brave, open, compassionate, and practical discussions. Discuss your own values and what your preferences are and why they're important to you. Discuss ways to deal with constant temptations or distractions within our own gay community. And that would be true with consensual non-monogamy or monogamy, because even in consensual non-monogamy, you still have to somehow deal with adhering to whatever group rules the two of you or more of you negotiate. Discuss your insecurities, discuss where your buttons are, and discuss strategies to minimize them or heal them. Celebrate your friend's success as proof that good things are possible for all of us. The rising tide floats all boats, as the saying goes. And you work on your own goals instead of just tearing others down for working toward theirs. What are the alternatives to toxic currencies? I think it's about mature values. What should we trade in instead of toxic currencies? And I would call these the healthy currencies. One of these is self-respect. in behavior, following through on your commitments, telling the truth, and honoring your own boundaries. Take care of yourself and give to others what reasonably and realistically you can. Emotional maturity, responding calmly instead of exploding, pausing before reacting, apologizing when you're wrong, and clarifying what the real issues are. Sexual empowerment, saying yes when you want to say yes in the context of consent, and saying no when you don't want to do something or with that person, and engaging in sexual expression that's authentic and aligned with the 6 principles of sexual health as they apply to you. Financial responsibility, budgeting, saving for retirement, living within your means, learning of financial literacy, and not equating your self-worth with your income. Authentic connection, building friendships based on mutual care and honesty and trust and platonic intimacy and shared fun, not just who you know or how you look together in photos. Peace of mind, choosing calm over chaos whenever you can, saying no to gossip and drama, practicing mindfulness, cultivating habits that contribute to your health in the very long term, including some selective hedonism, I say, for fun. Eating dessert might not be extremely healthy, but it's fun and contributes to quality of life. Choose your vices judiciously and balance the fun of indulgent with a realistic restraint. Forgiveness, releasing grudges, but setting healthy boundaries and focusing on the future rather than ruminating on past slights. And empathy and gratitude, practicing compassion for others' struggles and recognizing diversity even when we don't initially want to. Appreciating what you have. That gets mentioned a lot, but practice not as often. You're appreciating what you have and expressing thanks in your daily life. I've said this before, that as a shrink, people say, hey, what's the key to happiness? And I say, well, there isn't one, because it's cultural and very subjective to your own experience. But if there's one that's an awfully good and reliable fast track to feeling better, it's about gratitude. The more you appreciate what's around you in abundance, the more abundance that tends to come to you. It just kind of works that way. So, as gay men, we've already lived through enough history of being marginalized and dismissed and told what they were less than. So why do we do to ourselves with toxic currencies? We don't have to. That's a community dynamic that we can collectively choose not to sustain from now and the future generations. The real power comes from maturity, from knowing your worth is not dependent on how many followers you have or how many partners you bed or how much you make or where you rank in some invisible social caste system. We see that all the time. You see the invisible social caste system among gay men, particularly in the urban centers. In the very long term, none of that matters. In the long term in life, you're going to want to have lived life on your terms with an emphasis on the things that really matter. Do a thing I call plan backwards. Think of how you want to feel at the end of your life and start living that way now. That might mean a relative shift in priorities or approaches or just your attitudes. It comes from grounding yourself in healthier values, from building relationships where security replaces insecurity, from seeing money, sex, and status in perspective as parts of a bigger life, but not the whole of it. So if you'd like support in trading out toxic currencies for healthier ones, the mature values and healthier ones, I'd be glad to help you. I work with gay men across California in therapy, where I'm licensed, and worldwide in coaching. We just kind of figure out the time zone difference, which is always a little bit of a challenge. You can call me or text me. Text is faster. 310-339-5778. 310-339-5778. Or email ken@gaytherapyla.com or ken@gaycoachingla.com. Both of them will reach me. And as always, with social media, Not that I want to talk about seeking likes like I was just talking about, but it is helpful to get these kinds of messages, which hopefully you find helpful, and get it out there. It just helps to get the word out. So, like or comment or review or ask questions, react to this kind of material, because when you respond, it really does help facilitate the process of producing it. So thanks, and I'll see you next time.
This episode is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. You chose to hit play on this podcast today. Smart choice. Make another smart choice with AutoQuote Explorer to compare rates from multiple car insurance companies all at once. Try it at Progressive.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Not available in all states or situations. Prices vary based on how you buy.